Hello everyone, Emmanuel Sam here, lead consultant for Seashore Leadership Foundation. Uh, Today we're going to be looking at a very interesting dimension or dynamic to leadership development, and this is important as the days go by, especially by reason of the presidential election of the United States of America, which has become the focus of the world at this time. There are a lot of things that are playing out, and it's important that we are able to, learn as much as we can from there, as it has to do with the nations of Africa. There are a couple of things that are going on right around the world about this time. Global conspiracies are being unraveled, and a couple of companies which have portrayed themselves as being, service-oriented toward the masses, toward public, have become partisan and have proven themselves otherwise. And so it's important at this time that, we over here in Africa begin to understand what's going on, discern motivations, and really take time to understand the disposition of some of the so-called multinational organizations who portray themselves in one way, but underneath they have some hidden agendas which may not allow for, an effective reformation in Africa and especially Nigeria. In recent time, a couple of leaders in Nigeria have taken to social media to try to, create some effects. Social media is a tool that's being used for communicating the state of things, even though most of the time we cannot ascertain truth from false. But, at the basic level, it's for communication and ensuring that people are up to date with things that are going on all over the globe today. But when we look at our leaders, past leaders, past ministers, past senators, a couple of them who take to social media to communicate with people, we realize that a lot of things at play. And first of all, I'd like to take two key points which we must take time to study if we are going to be effective as upcoming leaders. When we understand the terrain effectively, then we are going to prepare to be able to engage appropriately. We need to begin to understand the terrain of global affairs, what the terrain is like. Global leadership matters. We need to begin to understand the technological terrain and the security terrain, the political terrain, and the economic terrain. These are four forces that really have roles to play in shaping, any territory, any nation, any continent. Technological forces, economic forces, political forces, and security forces. Right now, when you look at the United States of America, these are the four key areas which, giants, so to speak, of various sorts are tussling themselves out to see who is going to be able to, take the baton in the end. All right. Now, I'd like to talk about the motivations of our leaders. In recent time, there's been a fuel hike. There's been a hike in fuel price, rather. And, nobody seems to be saying anything about it. And we begin to see that leaders are giving all manner of excuses why this has to be the way it is. I'd like us to note that there are a lot of things playing out. We may not have the facts and figures, but on a broader spectrum, we have a summary of things that are going on right now. In strategic warfare, one of the key tools for shaping the perception of the masses or for controlling the masses in order to keep them in check is by the imposition of hardship. Now, there's been several outcries about the fact that as we continue taking loans from foreign nations, it is further plunging Nigerians, the current Nigerians and the generations yet unborn, into debts which we may not be able to wangle ourselves out of. But our leaders aren't paying attention. And this isn't far-fetched. Most of the leaders currently, political leaders, so to speak, are in their 50s and above. Most are in the 50s and 60s. The president himself is in his 70s. And so they don't have anything to lose. I mean, it's about get all of this, amass as much as you can. If you die, you leave some wealth, for their kids and their generation, even those yet unborn. However, this myopic view of life has made our leaders not to understand the world terrain effectively. While we cannot undermine the fact that there are a lot of, hidden games being played underground, we must tell ourselves the truth. Recently, I also read the news that they're about to cede several companies to people who may have foreign affiliations, who may be frontmen for foreign organizations. That's what they always do. Most Nigerians who we think actually own some of these assets are actually frontmen for global entities of some sort. However, I want us to understand that the principle of colonization is replaying itself. They are trying to recolonize Nigeria, and these four forces we talked about are in great effect. Matter of fact, except the technological aspect, the other three aspects are greatly being enforced at this time, in the Nigerian society. The economic forces are being controlled. The political, leadership forces are being controlled by the same people. The security, the military, the paramilitary, all that are being controlled by the same people. Well, thanks to the fact that we are not so technologically advanced, that would have been the end, because it seems like the technological window is the only place where we have some ventilation to be able to air our views. And right now they are trying to impose shutting down and managing social media content. Well, managing social media content isn't the issue. The issue is, what laws do we have to defend those who cannot defend themselves? I mean, when people who are in positions of authority see that they have to sanction and enforce everything without allowing for those whom they are putting these laws against to be able to have, some sort of ventilation or some sort of channel to be able to defend themselves, then that is an oppressive form of leadership. That is a dictatorial form of leadership. First of all, human rights lawyers in Nigeria, to a great extent, our political class, especially those, in very high echelons of power, do not respect the law from that which we read on news every day. They have little regard for constitutional rights. And this battle is about laws. And so we see all over social media how, in a couple of instances, the police brutalize people. A few, of course, because there's been a lot of checks in recent time, and I appreciate the good work that is going on right now in the police. However, there are still some elements, and there is really nobody in the police circle that is speaking out for these people who are being maltreated. I mean, these are all citizens of this country. And yet we have leaders who undermine the greater aspects that must be attended to, and then begin to handle frivolous things which will help them to cement their hidden agendas. Why do we want to shut down the mouths of people on social media? When we see the emphasis of our leaders, especially when we consider the geographic environment from where a couple of these leaders come out and begin to project that some laws, some kind of law should be enforced against the agreement of the masses, then you understand that there are hidden motives behind this. In other words, these people don't want people to be able to stand up to them and say, no, this form of leadership being in practice right now is oppressive. I mean, most people are so comfortable in the fact that, they've had a lot of financial affluence by reason of, politics, business, or whatever, and they are not able to stand to speak for the masses. And they just believe that, everything goes. Now, the truth is, we cannot continue like this. Something is coming. And that which is coming is that there will come a time when there's going to be a lot of betrayals from even security forces. Security forces are going to turn against those who are oppressing the masses, because the security forces themselves also have family members whose rights are being trampled on, who are being treated like animals. Now, we understand that Nigerians are not actually behind all of this. We know that there are several global forces who, by reason of economic transactions, enter into some sort of agreements with Nigerian leaders to ensure that they carry out their own agenda while bearing the brunt, while projecting themselves as the people who are behind a couple of these things. We know a couple of these things, are not as a result of Nigerians making decisions. However, it's time we begin to understand that things cannot go back to the same way they used to be. The protest and the destruction of lives and property which just took place by reason of EndSARS, that's something that, we believe that we can contain, but when it happened, we could not contain it. Yes, a lot of lives were lost. However, it has signaled something. Now imagine if that was just 10% and then that happens 100% around about the country. Even those who think they have mobile policemen and military men guarding them are not safe. We must come to the point where we decide to do the right thing. We cannot keep playing around in circles. There is no time. It has begun. It's a revolution which will bet the reformation and is going to bring about a transformation. Those who are comfortable and who are lofty in their thoughts, believing that they can get away with anything, well, your time is up. In a very short moment from now, a lot of things are going to turn. The tide is turning seriously against bad leaders in Africa. I can tell you, a generation is rising up that is going to be so equipped with leadership wisdom that is going to be able to maneuver the traps that are being set, the snares of our current leadership territory, our current leadership curriculum, our current constitutional, our current constitutional map. We are going to be able to go beyond that because we understand that it is time to switch, but many are not paying attention. Yes, there are a couple of leaders up there who are good, who understand the need for a change, but they aren't speaking out because they are trying to keep their reputation. They're trying not to bring themselves into limelight. For those who try to speak out a little bit on social media, they try to speak in quotes. They try to use implied statements. However, this is what I want us to understand. For the upcoming leaders and those who are standing, in integrity, those who really want to see how they can foster, truth in our society, we must fight for our country with whatever weapon we have. Some of us have the pen to write articles. Some of us have the voice to do, to make videos and audios. We must begin to speak out. Silence is a sign of cowardice. Silence is a sign of consent. Silence is a sign of agreement to the status quo. At whatever capacity, we must begin to speak out. Not because we hate our leaders, we are all Nigerians. But we must begin to speak out because most of our leaders themselves are ignorant. And I say it again, most of our leaders in society, in our nations, they are ignorant. Yes, there are some of them who, cannot help themselves because of the circles of power, because of their affiliations, especially in instances where their rise to power was tied to several affiliations which they belong to. However, we understand that there are several radicals who were in such systems who still came out and said, no, there is need for a change. You see, I don't believe that Nigeria cannot coalesce. I don't believe that. I don't believe that Nigeria must divide. I don't believe that. I don't believe that Nigeria cannot become one. I don't believe that. I simply believe that there are elements, as always has. I mean, when you look at what is going on in the United States, recently, I read an article, I read a nugget by, from an investigative source about how the database, of the software that was used for the election had a server in Germany, and then it had some roots to Venezuela and a couple of other places. And so we understand that there are several strands of structures that determine the shape or establish or destroy the territorial integrity of any nation. But we must start from somewhere. We must, go beyond, churches praying, imams praying, traditionalists praying. We must go beyond all of this to begin to seek out strategies by which we can help ourselves. I mean, we know that these people who are funding, giving us all these bogus grants and all of that, they don't like us. Rather, they put up policies that will make us not to develop our territorial potential so that we can continually be enslaved to them. I mean, we have all the resources, but our leaders are inspired more, a lot of them, most of them, toward theft, slandering, opposition rather than unity, self-destruction rather than self-development. This is what our leaders are inclined toward because of that which those who, empower them financially and give them a false sense of hope, a false sense of strength in themselves because of what they infuse into them, because of what they enlighten them with in their circles of power. However, those days are coming to an end because it is time for us to rise up and begin to speak at a wavelength where even the rural areas will begin to boil. We must understand that we cannot allow ourselves to continually be enslaved. And so when leaders don't want to come into the place where they are now conscious of the need for service, then something is going to happen. I tell you, there is a lot of dissatisfaction inside of the circles of the security forces. And if care is not taken, a lot of structures of government are going to implode. And when this happens, it's not going to be a pleasant experience. For those of us who are leaders who are standing upright, we must now begin to discern the need for and understand the need to go into, building structures that will further enhance our capacity to become a society that is ideal, that will at least make people feel a sense of we belong to a country. I mean, where is the spirit of patriotism? Where has that gone? While we look at, the various economic challenges and speak in ambiguity and try to see how we can make people see things and try to conceal some things behind the scenes, there are are more challenges coming up on a very vast scale, such as cyber espionage. I got wind of an information where a professor from the United States came into this country, ICT related professor. He came into this country just a short while ago, and he talked about the fact that the Nigerian society technologically is so poor. Somebody can just sit down with a computer in his house and just shut down all the banking systems and impose hardship on this nation for one whole week. People cannot withdraw, banks cannot run transactions, all this can happen. And we aren't paying attention. Now, this tells me a lot. This tells me that our leaders are ignorant or complicit in refusing to intentionally develop our nation to meet, at least to get up to the minimum average of global standard as it has to do with ICT development. I mean, we are having such a smooth romance with China and a couple of other nations, and these are nations that have so advanced technologically. How are we going to be able to, spark up a revolution that will be sustainable when we don't have 50% commensurate their strategic intelligence as it has to do with security forces, cyber intelligence, artificial intelligence? How are we going to be able to match these things? And yet, we have refused to understand that if we don't develop ourselves, we continue putting ourselves on the disadvantage within the context of the global index. And so, I'm calling on our leaders to wake up. Young aspiring leaders, you need to understand that right now as a nation, our bearing isn't such that it is taking us towards attaining global stage. Forget about what is being said on the news. Forget about what is being said on the news. We understand these things. There is a whole lot that we could do. If Nigeria decides to develop itself today, everybody is going to have a place to function. Everybody is going to have a job. I mean, there are several parastatals that need subunits for them to be effective, and that would mean mass employment. But what do? We stash these monies abroad. What do? We destroy ourselves because we are unwilling to tell ourselves the truth. Most leaders have so compromised that they believe that they've gone beyond repair. They've gone beyond that which can be resuscitated. And so they rather just see the destruction to the end than begin to start up something that, will not be sustained. Well, I tell you, you're wrong. Nigeria is going to become a very great nation. Nigeria is going to become a nation of experts. There's going to be technological innovations, ingenuity. Nigeria is going to be a place that the dignity of labor is going to be highly appreciated. Nigeria remains the giant of Africa, and Nigeria is rising out of obscurity. There may be need for a change of leadership, as I believe there should. This current crop of leaders, over 70 to 75% of the leadership of Nigeria today, in my opinion, their foundations are built on falsehood, intentional strategic falsehood, curricularized falsehood that is not allowing the younger generation, the generation within the class of the 40s down, to begin to see the light, such that we can stand up to match some nations globally. Nigeria is becoming a great nation. And so I have a word for upcoming and aspiring leaders. Pay attention to what is going on around the globe today. Study the election process in America. Don't be so quick to begin to write things on social media. Learn to discern motivations and intentions. Don't follow conventional media articles. Study the nature of conspiracies and the map of their networks. Study the nature of their structures. How they connect laws to cybernetics, to artificial intelligence, to the economy, and how it connects to influencing thrones of political establishments and thrones of government of a nation. Study dictators and dictatorial regimes and see, by reason of that which is flying around, those who have been behind the dictatorship in most nations who the world may not have known until now. There is so much to study. I like those who aspire to genuine leadership to spend this time studying, because a lot of conspiracies are being unraveled. Pay attention to names that are being called. Most of them are true, most of them are false, but pay attention to names that are being called who sponsor, a lot of global attacks against leaders who want to stand in truth. Pay attention to the motivations behind aspirations into political leadership, especially those that have to do with, the presidential aspirants, or, the current president of the United States and the so-called president-elect of the United States. Pay attention not just to what they are saying, but to the causes that they support. Pay attention to the bills and their focus when they come into power. I mean, it's not like Nigeria and a couple of African leaders that will say things and don't do it. Those people are idealistic. They believe in their ideologies and they pursue it to the end. That's one of the things that make them distinctive from African leaders. They pursue ideologies to the end, whether they are true, whether people accept them or not. When they believe in something, most of them to a great degree, they pursue their convictions. It is politics by convictions. Pay attention to the convictions of global leaders, and then compare that to what enhances human dignity and what doesn't. And then you begin to understand the forces at play here, and then you begin to discern what to do. Do not just go on social media because you want to connect with friends. No. Make social media a platform for studying to know what is going on globally, so that you can know where to stand. If you stand in the wrong place, you may lose your authority in the future. You may lose your ability to steward authority, righteous authority. Right now, we need to pay attention to the global scene, because whatever happens there affects us. And while our leaders are being constrained, thereby underplaying what is going on globally and its direct effect to our nation and our beloved continent, I want us to understand that all of these have a lot to do with Africa. Remember, Africa must break out of the pangs of post-colonial slavery. Nigeria must break out of the pangs of post-colonial slavery. All of what is taking place right now, by reason of imposition of hardships through policies and laws and wrong interpretation of economic dynamics, these are all, post-colonial infiltrations playing out by reason of economic, managerial and political interpretations here and there, in order to try to create an impression before the masses, which isn't actually true. We must pay attention to these things. In our next week's broadcast, I'm going to bring up a couple of examples, and then we're going to begin to speak to touch hidden motives, as has to do with, our leaders. We're going to pick up a couple of comments that our leaders have made, expand on these comments, and then we can see the whole agenda behind the scenes. Stay tuned to our broadcast. I believe we are going somewhere. Remember, Nigeria is going to become one of the greatest nations on the planet. Thank you very much for staying tuned to this broadcast. I hope you've been enlightened. Until next week, see you at the top. Thank you.